Thank you, Leader. I have two apologies from Councillor David Stitt and Councillor Colin Wiper. No other apologies intimated.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest? No. Move on to item 3, minute of the meeting of 29th of November 2012. Happy to move.
Second.
And minutes of meeting of 18th of December. Happy to move.
Second.
Move on to item 5, council tax and community charges, restrictions on voting. Mr. Haswell, anything to add to the report?
Nothing to
Now move on to item 6, the budget and council tax 2013-14. This is a background report for information to help members consider the budget for 2013-14. Mr. Garrett, is there anything to add to the report, or is it as written? With that, I would like to formally move the administration's budget.
Second.
The administration's budget has been through a development process as decided by the Council in August 2012. Following engagement and equalities impact assessment, some changes have been made to the original proposal we issued on 18th of December 2012. That amended budget was circulated last week, and I now have pleasure in moving the Conservative SNP's administration's budget proposal. When we established this administration, our partnership document spelled out our shared commitment to work together to achieve real progress for the people of Dumfries and Galloway. The current economic difficulties underpin everything we do, and it is in this context that these challenging times that we have drawn up proposals both to achieve revenue savings, as we must do, but also to invest in the future of our region. I would like to thank Mr. Garrett and his team, as well as the Council Directors, for their professional advice on the administration's proposals. I would also like to repeat this administration's appreciation of the feedback given by members of the public during the public engagement, and also to the trade unions for their input. I would also like to record the administration's thanks to the independent and non-aligned groups, as well as to Councillor Wiper for engaging with the administration on our proposals. And my personal thanks go to all administration members who have contributed to the development of our plans, especially Councillors Ian Dick, Graham Nicholl, Rob Davidson and Jill Dykes, who have helped me through this. Our proposals tell the people we serve how we intend to invest in vital services for our communities, supporting our local economy and small businesses through this difficult time, while sustaining where we can the services on which we all depend. In the next financial year, our council must make savings of $7.2 million. Having already made reductions of $29.3 million over the previous 3 years, to continue delivering balanced budgets, we must save nearly as much again, $27 million over the coming 3 years. Our budget avoids compulsory redundancies, supports small businesses through a package of targeted measures, and expands our graduate employment and apprenticeship scheme. We are continuing to support civic pride initiatives, and this year make specific provision in the run-up to 2014 Commonwealth Games to recognise and support sporting excellence. We are also introducing community commissioning and support for burial grounds maintenance. We also recognise the importance of reducing our council's physical office estate and carbon emissions. To that end, we are supporting energy-saving measures, such as photovoltaic panels and LED street lamps, and rationalising our council's office property portfolio. We realise that this involves cultural change, but this is essential to provide and maintain services within reduced budgets. To give immediate effect to those proposals, I will be moving that all previous delegations with regard to the Council's disposal policies in relation to those properties are removed. Comment on our budget proposals has highlighted the issues of roads funding. While I note that draft proposals from the Labour Group include a larger revenue cut than we have proposed, I can advise that the administration proposes to spend £1 million of the indicative £1.8 million of additional capital funding announced as a result of the Barnett consequentials on rural and urban roads, in accordance with our policy on rural and the state's lifeline link. It is one of this administration's aims to develop shovel-ready projects, and we will therefore earmark the remainder of that indicative £1.8 million for capital spend in this financial year on shovel-ready projects, which will be subject to the usual scrutiny process. Reference has also been made to the ring-fence money held by this council for the purpose of theatre provision in Dumfries. We recognise the very considerable effort made by the Theatre Royal to attract capital investment. Having sought governance advice on this issue, it is not our intention to release this funding as an immediate outcome of today's process. For the money to be released, our council requires an application from the Theatre Royal detailing their proposals. So I am today, on behalf of the administration, inviting the theatre to enter into discussions with us with a view to a report coming to an early meeting of the Policy and Resources Committee, detailing the spending of those ring-fence funds and inviting the council to agree to their use in supporting Scotland's oldest extant theatre. We value the input that colleagues in other political groups have had during this process. The independent group have contributed greatly to the policy development funding for graduate experience employment programmes and undergraduate placements. And we are grateful to them for this, which will contribute to the Crichton experience. We have circulated our budget proposals widely, and we appreciate that in these times we cannot satisfy everyone's aspirations. However, what we have done is to endeavour to produce a balanced budget which safeguards jobs and services, supports our local economy, and provides a sustainable way forward in delivering services for the people of Dumfries and Galloway. I have therefore much pleasure in submitting the following motion to our Council. I move the adoption of the Conservative SNP budget as previously circulated, including the budget savings options detailed in templates 01 to 27, together with the policy development funding as detailed in the templates attached to the budget proposal. 2, that while our Council operates under a scheme of maximum delegation, given that many of the savings which have been identified within the budget require the implementation of the proposals with effect from the beginning of the financial year 2013-2014, delegation be withdrawn from all committees in respect of the implementation of the savings proposals, to enable officers in consultation with local members to effect those proposals and to report to committees as appropriate. 3, that £1 million from the indicative £1.8 million allocated to our Council as a result of the Barnett consequentials be allocated in accordance with our policy on rural lifeline links and urban estate accesses, with the balance being allocated to shovel-ready projects to be identified in accordance with our Council's capital investment strategy. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to formally second the administration's budget. Our proposals deliver a balanced budget with no reliance on reserves or capital receipts to balance the books. At the same time, we maintain our commitment to delivering the living wage and appropriate uprating, recognising the importance of this measure in a low-wage economy such as Dumfries and Galloway's, as well as continuing our policy of avoiding compulsory redundancies. We will therefore be increasing the living wage to £7.50 an hour. Our budget also signals this administration's determination to change the culture of this council. We want members and senior management to consider budget issues corporately We need to work together to deliver savings across our council whilst delivering our priorities. Our starting point is to deliver outcomes in the single outcome agreement within reducing budgets. That means that services must change. We require change to meet the challenges of constrained public finances and the need for a move to preventative spending and early intervention. Alongside the Conservative SNP partnership document, these basic principles underpin our budget and what we want to achieve together. Our specific measures, we have recognised the potential pressures welfare reform will cause the people of Dumfries and Galloway and our council. We have therefore allocated a further £470,000 to the £1.2 million already allocated in December to meet these challenges. This will include work already underway to consider means of expanding credit unions across the region. We support early intervention measures for our vulnerable young people by resourcing the GIRFEC agenda and making targeted support available to our most deprived cluster schools, as well as tailored support to vulnerable children on an individual basis. The GIRFEC agenda is important to this council and this administration, and we will resource it accordingly. Much has been made by the Labour group of the removal of 7 full-time equivalent primary teachers. I will remind members that this scheme was introduced on a temporary basis to allow the expansion of GIRFEC. The administration's proposals will facilitate the use of Teacher Refresh, avoid compulsory redundancies in the future, and maintain classroom assistance in the areas where they are most needed. On roads infrastructure, the Leader has already outlined our Labour colleagues' willingness to support a larger revenue cut than we have proposed and cover this up with a short-term capital fix. We, on the other hand, have chosen to be entirely transparent in what we are doing and will allocate the additional resources obtained by the Scottish Government through the Barnett settlement in the manner the Leader has outlined, with ample opportunity for the member scrutiny and debate. This additional funding means that more resources will be devoted to rural and estate roads infrastructure than was spent in the last financial year. We have also taken on board suggestions from other political groups, allocating additional money to graduate placements, and we have decided to abolish charging for instrumental instruction altogether in place of our earlier proposal to reduce fees by 50%. This is a budget which balances the continuing need to make savings with the need to invest in our region. We have been open and transparent in what we have done. We have sought engagement with political groups and demonstrated a willingness to make changes to our initial proposals. We have drawn up a final proposal with the best interests of this region at its core, and I hope that it will gain support from across the chamber.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to move an amendment to the coalition budget as set out on page 3 of the document, Fairness in Tough Times Budget Summary. But firstly, I'd like to begin by placing on record a huge appreciation from the Labour group to the 7,200 staff employed by Dumfries and Galloway Council. As a result of the cuts from the UK and Scottish Government, we have seen the Council's budget reduced by nearly £30 million over the past 3 years, and it's a real credit to our staff that they have continued to provide such a high level of service to the 148,000 people across our region, despite the challenging circumstances. We owe it to those staff and local residents who provide and use our services to set a budget today that has been properly debated and scrutinised. And whatever difficult decisions we take and choices we make, a budget that has been set for the right motives, not one that merely rejects a proposal because it has come from an opposition party. Leader, it's for that reason that the Labour group cannot support the Tory SNP coalition budget as it currently stands. We cannot support the view of Tory and, astonishingly, SNP councillors who think that George Osborne isn't cutting public spending fast enough or deep enough, so feel the need to cut spending by £300,000 more than required to balance our budget. We cannot support the view of Tory and, yet again, astonishingly, SNP councillors who think that Tory's recent 1% rise in benefits is far too generous, so we should cut, in real terms, kinship care allowances in our region. We cannot support the view of the Tory SNP coalition that we spend too much, enough on road repairs when our region is plagued with potholes. And we cannot support the view of the Tory SNP coalition that on the eve of the introduction of the devastating welfare reform proposals, the best thing to do is attack the most vulnerable in our region by slashing welfare rights and adult education budgets. We do, however, support the view of Alex Salmond when he says it is wrong for councils to cut teachers' numbers in a way that increases the ratio of pupils to teachers. It's just a shame that the SNP councillors in Dumfries and Galloway don't support his view. It's for those reasons that I move an alternative budget on behalf of the Labour Group. This is the first time all councillors will be given the opportunity to debate or discuss the council's budget for the forthcoming year. And I hope that even at this late stage, the Tory and SNP coalition will listen to that debate, not merely rubber stamp their proposals. Our alternative budget not only proposes ways to avoid the most draconian cuts in teacher numbers, in roads repair budget, in welfare advice and area committee budgets, it also minimises the reductions proposed by the coalition in a range of services from street cleaning, library material fund and adult learning. Labour's budget sets out clear priorities for allocation of policy development funding for the year ahead. Our new deal for retailers and local businesses allocates an extra £732,000 over the next 2 years to support jobs at a time our region faces an employment crisis. Youth unemployment, in particular in Dumfries and Galloway, is at a record high of 8.5%, compared to a Scottish average of 7.2% and a UK average of 7%. Yet the Tory SNP coalition has no new initiatives to help tackle this crisis. In contrast, we propose to invest £240,000 over the next 2 years, expanding the Council's modern apprenticeship scheme to include the private and voluntary sector, creating more apprenticeships. Our high streets are also in crisis. A day hardly passes when we don't have an announcement about the latest high street chain folding. In Dumfries town centre alone, there are 292 shops, but almost a quarter are sitting empty. The story is the same in many of our main streets from Stranraer to Langham. I therefore welcome the decision of the coalition to accept the long-standing calls from the Labour Group to expand the financial assistance for small business to include the retail sector at a cost of £200,000 over the next 2 years and to spend £120,000 over the next 2 years to continue the shop doctor. However, I am disappointed that the coalition has ignored the request from retailers for the type of practical help that could be provided by Labour's proposals for town centre officers, whether it's for establishing task forces to draw up long-term plans for a town centre or implementing a proper marketing strategy. The other major crisis about to hit our region is the Tory-led government's welfare reform. Over the past few months, the Labour Group's working group on welfare reform has been holding a series of evidence sessions with RSLs, welfare advice agencies, local charities, voluntary groups, families and individuals who will be affected by welfare reform. And I can tell you the impact these reforms will have is frightening. We've been working closely with our local MP and MSP on developing a series of measures we believe the Council and other agencies should adopt to help mitigate against the massive damage these reforms will have on our region. It is disappointing, however, that we won't get the opportunity to put forward these proposals at Council Committee until after the Council has set its budget. It's almost a year since this council had a report on welfare reform, and whilst there is a lot of good work being done behind the scenes by council staff, it's clear that dealing with welfare reform is way down the agenda for this coalition. As an interim measure in our budget, as well as £1 million of budget pressure funding built into the budget model, we've allocated a further £1 million over the next 2 years to a range of services such as supporting additional welfare advice, the expansion of credit unions and other banking facilities for the most vulnerable, and a proper mapping of services already available, such as food banks, furniture projects, so we can identify and help fill the gaps that exist. The Coalition claim that there's duplication in the services currently available, yet just weeks away from the introduction of many of the welfare reform measures, the Council has made no effort to even properly map those services, so cuts in the budget of organisations such as Welfare Rights is premature. At a time many local families are struggling financially, we welcome the decision of the Tory SNP coalition to now adopt Labour's proposals in our draft budget to set aside £180,000 to scrap music tuition fees in our schools. The introduction of fees was no doubt done with the best of intentions to help balance the council budget. However, we have all seen the collapse in uptake to know this is a policy that we got wrong. Another policy the council got wrong was the decision 2 years ago by the Tory administration, with the support of the SNP, to cut the budget for community wardens by £250,000. We now have an integrated warden scheme, but fewer wardens to cover a wider area. The Labour Group therefore proposes to invest £200,000 to create an additional 7 community safety officer posts to help clamp down on the petty crimes, antisocial behaviour, dog following and littering that plague far too many of our communities. The extra officers would work within our communities and help make them safer. As well as support for job creation, protecting the vulnerable and making our community safer, the Labour Group budget also refocuses council spending on delivering the other priorities of local people, such as tackling the shocking state of our roads. It's estimated that there is already a £116 million backlog of repairs required to local roads, and the condition will continue to deteriorate. As members know, investment in roads is funded from both capital investment and revenue funding. The Labour Group's alternative budget proposes moving the balance more towards capital investment, focusing on long-term repairs. We will increase capital spending by an additional £1 million for each of the next 3 years, but recognising the pressures on the revenue budget, we will reduce this by £750,000. This will mean that £2.25 million more will be spent repairing the region's roads over the next 3 years if the Labour Group proposals were adopted today instead of the Tory SNP coalition proposal. The Leader and the Deputy Leader referred to the recent UK Government Autumn Statement also provides over £330 million of new spending to the Scottish Government over the next 2 years to support capital spending, with potentially £1.8 million being allocated to Dumfries and Galloway Council. The Labour Group will be pressing the Council to allocate this funding to additional road spending and economic regeneration over and above the extra £1 million in our budget. As referred to earlier, our budget also proposes an uplift by inflation of kinship care allowances at a cost of £40,000, and we have also set aside a modest sum of £10,000 to introduce a school transport hardship fund. This will help support those families on low incomes whose children, as a result of changes to the council's school transport policy, find that they no longer have free bus travel to school, but walking distances of up to 3 miles poses a safety risk, for example, on some of our rural roads. Leader, our other measures in terms of GIRFEC the Graduate Employment Scheme, Crichton Business Plan support, and support for the World Curling Championships and Talented Athletes programme are in line with the Coalition budget, and therefore I won't go into detail as they are self-explanatory. There is one final measure in the Labour Group budget the leader refers to, that is to release the £455,000 currently sitting in the Council Reserves ring-fence for theatre provision in Dumfries to Theatre Royal to support the proposed £1.6 million refurbishment of Scotland's oldest theatre. In 2010, when the Council voted not to allocate funds to the theatre, we were told there were 3 reasons for some councillors' decision. Firstly, the Council would build a new cultural centre in Dumfries, so we didn't need the Theatre Royal anymore. Indeed, the then Chair of Planning and Housing Environment, Roger Grant, said it would be built within 3 years. Secondly, Tory councillors said the Theatre Royal could not be refurbished as it was beyond repair. And thirdly, we were told there was no evidence of match funding. 2 years on, there is almost £1 million of match funding, clear evidence that the theatre can not only be saved but can flourish. And in the current climate, there is no chance whatsoever of seeing a new cultural centre in Dumfries anytime soon. Releasing the £455,000 will not cost the Council any more, as the funds are already ring-fenced, but it would signal a commitment to not only support the arts in our region, but be a major boost for the construction industry and the regeneration of a regional capital programme. Put simply, it's a no-brainer, and no one can justify holding back these funds for any reason other than sheer vindictiveness. I am pleased that the Tory SNP administration have agreed with Labour that these funds be released. Leader, in concluding, I'd like to thank Paul and Gillian from the Finance Department for their advice and hard work with us. The budget we propose is once again balanced, despite the challenge of UK and Scottish Government cuts. It freezes the council tax. It results in fewer cuts and more funding for frontline services than the Coalition proposals. I'm therefore happy to formally move the Labour Group budget, which I believe delivers fairness in these tough times. And there is a copy for all members at the desk, along with the
Councillor Ogilvie.
Thanks, Leader. I'd like to second the Labour Group budget. Councillor Nicholson has highlighted clearly where we differ from the Tory SNP coalition budget, in particular in terms of cuts to teachers and roads budgets, and also the areas where we would prioritise our policy development funding differently. I'd therefore like to focus more on the budget setting process and where we go from here. This year we have a process that was very much two-tier. Information was given to the administration but not to other parties. And more worryingly, in some cases, inaccurate information was provided to the Labour Group. This council is supposed to treat all councillors equally, but it's pretty clear that some are more equal than others. In many ways, we are in danger of being accused of politicising our officers who have found themselves having to write answers for the administration to try and justify their budget. If the administration want to go down a route where they want to portray saving options given to them by officers as their ideas, then at the very least they should know what they mean. One of the changes the coalition draft budget is to include a proposal from the independent group to widen the graduate employee scheme to include the Crichton. But that proposal, as well as a number from the Labour group, have never been scrutinised or debated by a committee of this council, because we have a process that only allows the administration's proposals to be scrutinised. We need to ensure that all proposals, whichever group they come from, have the same level of scrutiny and discussion. And we need to ensure that members have an opportunity at full council to properly scrutinise the budget. One of the most shameful sights I have seen in my time as a councillor was the way you, Leader, read out a statement about the council's draft budget in December at a meeting of full council and then refused to take a single question from a single member. I appreciate some of your own coalition hadn't seen the draft budget until they opened the envelopes on that day. But every item at every council meeting should allow members time to ask questions and properly discuss an issue. But the biggest issue is what is that whatever we decide today, this is just the start of a massive cut we face over the next up to 3 years. Once again, we have a budget that mainly focuses on how we achieve 7 million of savings and very little debate on how we spend the 340 million. We have at our disposal, other than a debate around a relatively small amount of policy development funding. If we are to make the level of savings we need over the next 3 years, it will require a transformation on the way the Council delivers services. No group in this Council has either a monopoly of ideas or a mandate to make a change needed without taking the public with us. That means we need a proper public consultation process, not a token gesture discussion at area committee, where the public are given no information about the savings we plan. Finally, we need to start the process for next year's budget now. That's why it's critical that we agree a timetable and get on with the work. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Maitland.
Thank you very much indeed. In terms of the budget process, I would like to suggest that actually I think this has been a very open and fair method of getting the information out onto the table and so that the public can see what's happening. And I would like to actually say to members that let's tweak this in the future, but I think this is exactly the right way of getting it forward. We are not going to have the same idiotic business of running in and out and seeing what's happening. Nevertheless, Leader, I would like to suggest that we ought to be able to consider each of the budgets, and I hope that you might consider a time to take to do that. I'm sure that we would like to see the proposals and consider them carefully. I will say, in reaction to what a couple of members have said, I rather resist the notion of inaccurate information having been given to other members, and I think that I would challenge that and ask people to substantiate that, because that's a very serious accusation. In addition to which, to suggest that officers are being politicised, that too is a really serious suggestion, and I demand that that is substantiated.
Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Leader. I would endorse what the Leader of the Independent Group has just said. I was hoping to put forward the Liberal Democrat budget today, but unfortunately I didn't get a seconder. But if anybody wants to second it now, then put your hand up. So, as part of the independent grouping, I'm quite pleased that we've been involved in the process and some of our ideas have been placed in the budget. We've met with representatives of the administration, and they will know that it is a difficult budget, so there's obviously going to be concerns. Education departments seem to be taking a hard hit in it, and there will be a reduction in primary school staffing, which we're concerned about. We're concerned about the effects on the litter operations of the council because of the reductions. We'll look forward to scrutinising it and make sure that there'll be no dropping of standards on that issue. One of the things which really concern me personally is the large cut in the adult learning budget. When I met with the admin representatives on Monday, I suggested that you looked at template number 11. Perhaps you could look at that again if we're having a recess. There's going to be a survey completed by the end of July on staffing for the department, and it's whether there'll be no cuttings, no savings in this financial year, but next year there'll be £500,000 saving. If the review can be finished by July, would it be possible to bring forward a part year saving on that, perhaps a quarter of that, £125,000, so that issues like the reduction in adult education budget can be reduced, so that saving can be cut. Thank you.
Councillor McKee.
Thanks very much, Chair. I didn't want to contradict Councillor Brodie, but I think it's template 21, adult learning services, that it's talking about. And from our point of view, I'd like it in the break reconsider your proposals to cut the budget of adult learning services more to the level of what's proposed by the Labour group. Although probably would prefer no reduction at all, but things being as they are, I think we've got to face up to the realities. But I'd ask you to reconsider your proposals on the basis that this work, the work that a CLD carries out, especially in Nithsdale, is very important in helping both the children and parents' development. It's increasing their confidence, and it also identifies other needs. They also, on working with them, the staff are able to bring them into the centre. And if I speak specifically about North West Resource Centre, I'll apologise to members right away, but that's the area that I know specifically, but also know that services are being delivered in other areas. As I say, let's get the parents into the centre, and it helps their confidence right away, and it helps in identifying their needs. And also through getting them into the centre, they can meet people who may have similar problems to theirs, and they recognise that they're not alone in having these problems, and that helps their confidence as well. And given what's proposed through the welfare rights, I think it's very important that these people know where they can go for support and help and gain the confidence to fill in their claim forms, and they can also get assistance in the same place. They can also, through CLD, be trained in get a number of different training courses, including confidence building, the use of computers, and they can actually gain SVQ qualifications, which can help them to get to employment, which is also a very important aspect. There are many other courses carried out by CLD, which, although not leading to a direct qualification, are important to the people attending, with the social contact itself being very, very, very beneficial, in addition to the training they get. The CLD and North West Resource Centre is doing an excellent bit of work in the community, and their remit now covers the whole of Nithsdale. And just for your information, they won 3 awards last year. An adult who was trained in there won the SQA Adult Learner of the Year. The centre got the SQA Star Awards, Lifelong Centre of the Year, Learning Centre of the Year, and the Pride of Worth Award, which is SQA's highest accolade, and it's picked from all the evening's winners, including both individual and centre categories, and they won that award, the Pride of Worth Award. And these sort of success stories, unfortunately, they're not always highlighted and publicised the way they should be, but there's a great deal of excellent work going on in the community, and as I say, they cover the whole of Nithsdale, not just the North West Resource Centre. And there's actually people from Arundel, Nestdale, the Stewartry. Don't think Wigton, that's a bit far away, but Arundel, Nestdale and the Stewartry, as well as other areas of Nithsdale, who use these facilities. So it's a success story, and as such should be recognised by us as a council and not destroyed by serious and over-the-top budget cuts. So as I say, I would hope that in the recess you'll reconsider this proposed cut in your budget. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's correct that we in the non-aligned group have not come forward with a budget, but preferred to try and influence other groups, and indeed we did meet with yourself, Leader, and the Chair of the Labour group. We did put forward a number of issues regarding education, social work, community customer services and welfare reform, and I note in your remarks that you thanked us for engaging in the process. Unfortunately, you didn't take much cognizance of what we put forward other than the welfare reform, and I'm pleased to see that both budgets recognise the need for much more resources to be put into the infrastructure for what is going to be a devastating attack on the poor, the sick, the vulnerable, by this Tory Lib Dem administration in the welfare reform bill or act that's that is upon us and will be even further put upon us with a bedroom tax. I am pleased to see that Labour did take cognizance of what we had put forward in kinship carers, where they recognise a 3% uplift, but it falls well short of the 56% that is needed to have parity with foster carers, and indeed to fulfil our commitment to our carer strategy, where we fall well short of that aspect, where foster kinship carers are paid a great deal less than the baseline of that of foster carers. And I heard the Deputy Leader speak of the low economy, and yet the SNP and Tories have chosen to ignore, indeed, perhaps the lowest paid of those in our communities and society in kinship carers, which is double, 200% and more providers than indeed what foster carers we have in our region. So, you know, it is a poor reflection on the Tory SNP administration in that respect. We did put forward as well in terms of our day centres, and I'm pleased to say that we have it in good authority that the £66,000 that was awarded last year on the budget will still be available for our day centres, and I hope that that scope is extended so the day centres can take advantage of that and not just in training. On community and customer services, we put forward that we wanted the integration of community services in Stranraer to be a responsibility of the Wigton Area Committee, and I would hope that that is the case. We are talking about a savings of £45,000, where there will be an increased or a greater spending on what would be required to integrate the services. So I would hope that this today we would get it confirmed that it will that the area committee will have the responsibility to look at that, and that that part of the budget will be taken out in terms of the saving under the community and customer service budget. Councillor Ogilvie referred to what is needed, and I think we are all sitting here as 47 councillors, and we all know what is needed to protect public services, but none of us really have the courage to come forward and state and indeed support that is needed. But what I would do is commend the Labour budget as a starting point, as I think Councillor Mayton was directing towards, and for further discussion, and hopefully from the SNP and Tory, that there is some compromise. We cannot afford to have 7 full-time equivalents in the behavioural support teachers removed from the service if we are to get it right for every child. And in that respect, I would hope that there is a compromise, that will be kept, as Labour has recognised, and again I congratulate and commend that, that be retained. So I would hope there is a starting point for further discussions, that there will be compromise, and that you accept some of the issues that we come forward with as the non-aligned group. I hope that is the case, Chair.
2 further speakers, then I would propose to take a recess for an hour. So Councillor Syme, then Councillor Lever.
Thanks, Chair. Just to reiterate what Councillor McKee was saying about the CLD, because I'm a former community agent in Upper Nisdale, and I used to go in the doors, people that needed the service as an agent, and we've no concept of the people out there that need their support. Through my own work, at one time, I discovered a guy that had a drink problem, and hadn't been out of the door for quite some time, except to buy alcohol. Managed to get him off the drink through, believe it or not, a computer course. There's also another chap that's doing a lot in the community now as well, that had the confidence to come to me and explain at the age of being in his 30s that he had problems reading and writing, and it was affecting his life and his employment. He was one of the guys that got awarded last year with a Learner Award. It's an absolutely vital service up in our area, which is in the IMD, and absolutely needs our support. We've got a young lady I was talking to last week was going round the doors on behalf of the RSL, explaining about the new bedroom tax. And she's out there dealing with people that are breaking down in tears. We're actually getting out more food parcels up there as we did during the miners' strike already. And these measures are just getting worse and worse, and there's people up there are in absolute desperation as there in other parts of the world. But I think with community learning and development, there are always people there that's approachable and they can tell about their problem. And if that's cut in the area, there's a lot of support's going to go out the window. So I would plead with everybody to try and look favourably at that. I can never believe as well, on another point, that anybody in this room would find it acceptable that kids have to walk 3 miles on the worst roads in Britain. So we must put something in place for that so it doesn't happen. I have a big issue with that in my own area. And I don't realise for a minute how anybody could pass something like that. But again, these are just a couple of points that I'd like to raise. There's a lot of people out there that members in this hall don't realise the circumstances. I could take them round a wee visit sometime if they'd like to come up.
Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Leader. At the January meeting of the Education Committee held to discuss cuts in the education budget, it was proposed in the administration's draft budget to remove 7 full-time equivalent primary school posts in the 7 most deprived areas of our region. The Labour Group expressed real concerns that it would have a massive effect on learning within the schools where these posts are being removed, and these are also echoed by the responses from the teaching unions. In response, the chair of the committee said that these were only draft proposals which were open to change. It's therefore extremely disappointing that in the administration's final budget, which we have here before us, it's clear that these representations have fallen on deaf ears. So much for consultation and listening, particularly since the cuts in the administration's budget are greater than needed to balance the budget, and these cuts in teachers' jobs are not needed. The administration should be ashamed of driving them through. And oddly enough, we have the SNP group fully supporting these cuts in teachers' jobs, clearly going against a diktat from the ministerial masters in Edinburgh that local authorities must maintain teacher numbers in line with pupil numbers. I trust that in line with their previous decisions, this has been okayed by their local government minister, Derek Mackay, who we know keeps a close eye on events here in Dumfries and Galloway Council. Or is this Dumfries and Galloway SNP group's own declaration of Independence Day from Mr Salmon and his ilk in Edinburgh? I would urge the administration to look again at these cuts in these vital posts.
With that, if we adjourn for an hour, I make that 20 past 11. So 20 past 12 a return.
Leader, if MD wishes to speak to the administration group, can you just tell everybody where you'll be, please?
If anybody wishes to come in. Right. Mr. Haswell asked if you could copy some notes of the motion. Have you any?
We have a copy of the motion here if you want to.
Could you put it around the... Well, members, we had an hour recess there to discuss any points we wanted to bring up. We had 2 or 3 brought to us, which as an administration we are happy to look at over the coming year through the normal committee process. However, we're looking to stick with our current budget as is. Councillor Maitland.
Yes, thank you. I understand where you're coming from. I am grateful, actually, as I said before, Leader, that that we have been through this process in the way we have. I think it's given people ample opportunity to consider what was happening. The independents have helped to shape and influence this particular budget over support for the Crichton music instruction. But above all, we would like to thank the administration for considering and adopting the Independence Group's proposal with respect to university undergraduate placement scheme. I do think that that actually, for a very tiny amount of money, is actually going to really have quite a strategic effect on the involvement of the Crichton facilities. And I do commend the administration for having done that. In the coming year, we shall be urging the administration to complete a review of sports and leisure facilities, because as far as we are concerned, that was one of the things that the Independent Group was particularly keen on. We are grateful and glad of the investment in the past year in green issues. That was also one of the things that the Independent Group agreed upon. We accept this as a tough budget. I know that my fellow members have got deep concerns about issues concerning the education and the issues over community teams, community wardens. They no doubt will be requesting to make their position clear on that. We are, after all, independents. But with that, I do accept that it's a tough budget. Circumstances are getting tougher, but I will be quite happy, Leader, to support your budget.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. After looking through some of the proposals from both budgets presented to us, there's just a couple of points I would like to make. On community wardens, I welcome the Labour proposals to allocate 200,000 for 7 new posts. Perhaps revenue receipts from the Police, Fire and Rescue Committee, in line with the P&F reform, could be used to continue this proposal over future years. Template 13, the reduction in street cleaning. This council should be proud that our LEAMS figures are well above national standards, and do not use this as an excuse to cut this service to be more in line with national statistics. I could not agree with any proposal to cuts in this area, especially as Dumfries and Galloway relies on tourism and visitors, and first impressions do have an impact on return visitors. In regards to template 21, the adult learning and CLD proposals, this is an area that has already been alluded to that has a massive impact on communities throughout our region, and I would encourage a rethink on this particular proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brodie.
Yes, Chair, before the recess I mentioned the deep cuts to adult learning. I'm still concerned about that. Would you give an undertaking that the admin would look at, as a matter of urgency, to look at the taking forward template 11 management and PHES? Even the six-week earlier introduction of that would save £75,000, and that could be put towards saving the adult learning budget.
Councillor Smith.
Obviously, it won't save the adult learning budget because the cut is for £225,000 in a full year and £150,000 for this year, so it certainly won't save it. I think it's disappointing. After this morning I was reeling over the various somersaults by the administration. I appreciate none of the somersaults were anything to do with the Labour Group budget. The allocation of £455,000 to the Theatre Royal clearly had nothing to do with the fact it was in the Labour Group budget. The allocating of £1 million to roads, again, clearly had nothing to do with the fact that it was in the Labour Group budget, but it was good to see those U-turns this morning by the administration. I think it's disappointing, however, that you haven't gone further. During the recess, the Labour Group put forward a number of common sense amendments to the administration's budget. We proposed a compromise. Obviously, that wasn't considered by the administration, and are not prepared to listen. Simply by removing £750,000 from the revenue budget for road repairs instead of £500,000, and then accepting the additional £1 million borrowing as proposed by the Labour group would have released £250,000. Instead of allocating £600,000 to support for local businesses when you're not even going to spend it this year, you could have allocated £300,000 this year and a further £300,000 the following year. Those two measures alone would have secured an extra £550,000 to be allocated today. You could have had £40,000 going on an increase in kinship care allowance. You could have had £10,000 going on a school transport hardship fund. You could have saved the 7 primary school teacher jobs by allocating £151,000 towards that. You could have avoided the £225,000 cut in adult education by using £181,000 to reduce it this year to just £69,000. You could have retained welfare rights funding pending a proper review of the way in which we commission housing services. You could have had town centre officer project, and you could have reduced the cut in secondary education from £600,000 down to £453,000 just by taking those common sense compromise proposals. But it's quite clear this administration are adamant you want to go ahead by attacking our schools and taking teachers from deprived areas. You're not interested in dealing with the problems we've got over school transport hardship fund. The SNP in particular should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. They don't think that George Osborne is cutting his budget enough, that you want to cut far more. You should be ashamed of yourself that you don't think kinship carers deserve to have an increase, and clearly you think the 1% rise in benefits is far too generous from the Tory government, and you've shown you're not interested in dealing with the crisis we're going to have over welfare reform. The fact you're not prepared to compromise, you're not prepared to listen, shows we've got an out-of-touch Tory SNP coalition.
Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, I'm confused here. There's no great clarity in item 2 as to what this actually means as the context of that in terms of removing a delegated powers in respect to the implementation of the savings. I'm even more confused with the leader of the independent group in moving that she supports the budget, and yet I've heard from 2 of the independent members who disagree with part of that budget. So I am confused in terms of that you continue, and you didn't take the opportunity to come back with a compromise on kinship carers, to give them a paltry, 3% uplift, to remove the reduction in the 7 full-time equivalents of behavioural support teachers, and no later than yesterday, I was faced with a school where it is facing difficulty in an area of deprivation and very much need the behavioural support teachers. So there was no opportunity taken in the compromise in the hour of the adjournment, and yet it says in here that to remove delegated powers, I presume in some way that's to say that it could be negotiated. If the budget is set, what could be negotiated? Perhaps if you could give us some clarification on that respect, Chair. The opportunity was there to accept Labour's points as being put forward. I commended that budget, and I would have hoped there could have been a compromise, but it does not look like it, and this, is totally confusing. Perhaps you could clarify, Chair.
Well, the administration are happy with the budget we've put forward, and as I've said, the suggestions that were brought to us, we will look at them and take them through the committee cycles over the next year. Councillor Dick.
Could I just have my understanding of that corrected? Behavioural support teachers in schools. What I'm looking at is correct, there were temporary trainee teachers put in a couple of years ago on a temporary basis, but they were trainee teachers. I didn't understand them to be behavioural support.
Chair of Education, could you just clarify that point?
If I hit the right button, sorry. Yeah,
Councillor Dick's absolutely correct. They weren't behavioural support assistants or teachers put into these schools. They were full-time equivalents put in to reduce the class size in those particular schools on the basis of the index of multiple deprivation. Since then, as they were temporary, there has been other interventions that have been put in place now through the GIRFEC agenda that has superseded the need for those particular 7 posts in the school.
Councillor Lever.
Once again, for clarification, in the motion, section 3, the £1.8 million allocated to our council from the Barnet consequentials, that's just for 1 year, is it? Rather than subsequent years.
It's a 1-year budget we're putting forward, yes. Councillor Forster.
Chair, I know it's a 1-year budget. What I'm asking is this recurrent, this £1.8 million from the Barnet consequential?
No. Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Chair. I'm still confused over paragraph 2 of your motion. Are you telling us today you're putting forward your budget as it is contained, but it's open for negotiation as the year rolls out?
No.
Well, would you explain paragraph 2 to me?
There were 2 or 3 suggestions brought to us during recess, and we're willing to look at those suggestions over the coming year.
Could you qualify or quantify look at? What do you mean by that?
We'll take the suggestions through the appropriate committee cycles. The ones that we felt, the ones that we feel have some merit. Right. Councillor Prentice, as you've not spoken yet.
Thanks, Chair. Just in reply to Councillor Scobie, read the independent group. That is exactly why we are independent, because we've all got independent minds. We're not whipped into line by our leader or anything else. We do exactly as we wish, Millie.
Councillor Carson.
Chair, just like to say I'm delighted the administration, when 24 out of 32 local councils charge for music tuition, just say I'm delighted that we're not denying any child the chance to take up music tuition, because it's well documented what an important role music is in the education of our children, and I'd just like to commend you for that.
Councillor McComb.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I find it a matter of great sadness that both budgets offered here today are removing over £7 million of spending power from Dumfries and Galloway. That is a very, very sad position to be put into. I note also, Chair, that there's only about £200,000 of difference between the 2 budgets. And I feel it is very, very sad indeed that the 2 groups involved could not have moved some way towards a compromise position.
No other speakers. Councillor Nicholson, do you want to speak? Last word, Councillor McCaughey, and then we'll go to the mover of the amendment.
I'm a bit surprised that your second part of your motion, where you seem to be withdrawing delegations from committees and giving it to officers. Is that correct?
No.
That's the way it reads.
And to enable officers in consultation with local members to effect those proposals and to report to committees as appropriate. Therefore, it's a final decision.
Chairman, can I say that when I was handed a motion, I've obviously got an earlier version. The motion which you've just read out is not the version that's been handed to the members. No, there's no consultation with local members there. The difference is that you refer to consultation with local members. I'm sorry, Leader. I just copied what I was handed, so I've obviously got an earlier version.
The way that reads, that committees will make no decisions on how things are done. Officers will do it and then tell the committees what they've done. That's what item 2 there says.
On the same point of clarification, you've got template 26. Basically, if you're actually going to give the delegation to officers, this is about actually looking at properties vacated and ones that could be coming up. So effectively, that motion reads as though you're basically not going to go through any process when you're actually disposing of these properties. You just got to leave it to officers to actually get rid of all these properties.
Process will be followed, but we're saying that these are the ones that we will actually be looking to address as quickly as we can. They need to be addressed for the start of this year. And to clarify, as I read out at the meeting, point 2, that while our council operates under a scheme of maximum delegation, given that many of the savings which have been identified within the budget require the implementation of the proposals with effect from the beginning of the financial year 2013-14, delegation be withdrawn from all committees in respect of the implementation of the savings proposals to enable officers in consultation with local members to effect those proposals and to report to committees as appropriate.
Can I just clarify that?
That is what was read out as
right.
our
That is not what we've got in front of us.
Yeah, changed it.
Because if you add in local members, what that therefore means is that 3 or 4 local members in a ward now have more power than a 19-man committee. I think you better get your thing looked at and sorted out pretty pronto.
The decision is being made by 47 members of this council, whether they all agree with it or not, but it will be the full council that will make this decision. That we are... Yes? Mr. Haswell?
Point, obviously you say local members and you don't actually specify which savings options. So obviously the reduction in funding for, say, adult education, how do you define local members, given the fact that all of us will have constituents who deal with adult learning? How do you define local members in each of those individual savings? Because it's not clear at all from what you're saying. The reality is each committee will receive a report at its next meeting to agree the draft budget for the year ahead. Now, it's quite clear from your savings templates today you've given clear direction as to where those savings should be made, so we don't have to go through the process where last year having a policy resources committee to then allocate the funding to the relevant committee. It will go in a report to the relevant committee before the beginning of the financial year. Nobody has a clue, frankly, what you're actually proposing within this particular amendment. You don't even specify which savings options. So if you're talking about every single savings options, then I would quite like to know exactly what a local member is when it comes to reducing, for example, the funding for secondary schools, because the way I read it, every secondary school will be affected. Therefore, every local member is involved in that discussion. It seems a bit chaotic, frankly.
Well, if you would read it and actually take time to absorb it, you'd see that it's only ones that require to actually be put in place as of the 1st of April. Ones for education will start halfway through the year. They will come through the normal process. We have a motion and amendment. Councillor Nicholson, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
It's obvious that anything I say you'll just ignore anyway, as you're ignoring all the questions. You haven't answered one of the questions from our group, perfectly relevant questions. So obviously you're bullish. Incompetent behaviour today is a bad reflection on... is a bad reflection on me as a councillor and as a council.
Point of order, Chair. I'd like a retraction from Councillor Nicholson for that. That's not
What about retract?
Not appropriate language for a chamber.
Can you?
I refuse to use
Right,
some of the
I'll
words
retract
that you
incompetent
used, and the other word you used
bullish
as well,
behaviour.
Councillor Nicholson.
Amendment.
Point of order, Chair.
Which one?
This motion that we've got in front of us is not what you read out. Could we have a copy of what you read out, please?
That's the point I was trying to make. You're going to take a vote on something that is incompetent.
Sorry, Leader.
Mr. Haswell.
Chairman, Leader, as I understand it, the motion that was handed to me for circulation of members is clearly not the same one as you read out. Just for members' information and fullest information, in the third last line of bullet point 2, after the word officers, in consultation with local members as appropriate, goes in. I've been asked a question. I think that part 2 of your motion is competent. It is competent for this council to delegate They have the right to delegate in terms of Section 53 of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. The motion is competent.
Sorry, can I come in here, Leader? I will hold my hand up. I've printed off the wrong document as the Administration Secretary. It was an error, and I apologise for that. It is not the absolute wording that the Leader read out earlier on. It was a personal, individual mistake.
Right. And now, we've had the winding up speech by the Labour on their amendment. I'm going to now speak to mine. I think we have had a full debate today, and in summing up for the administration, I will address some of the points that have been made. We have observed the budget process as agreed by this Council last August, and I would repeat what I said earlier, that in these times we cannot satisfy everyone's aspirations. This administration greatly appreciates the efforts and dedication of all our Council staff. Irrespective of events in other parliaments, be that Westminster or Holyrood, this administration recognises our obligations to the people we serve. I am pleased the leader of the Labour group has acknowledged that we have indeed been prepared to listen and change our proposals, although this was done without any input from his political group until today. In fact, since the administration's draft budget was produced in December, we have had no engagement of any sort from our Labour colleagues, in spite of repeated invitations. In total,
excuse me, can you withdraw that? Can you withdraw that? Can you withdraw that statement, please, Leader? We had engagement. I tried to engage with you. I sent you our draft budget over 3 weeks ago and asked you to get back to us, which you didn't do.
I gave you your opportunity to say your speech. I'm having my 2 minutes. We have had, in total, we are devoting more than 1.6 million of resources towards tackling the impact of welfare reform. Whilst I look forward to seeing the Labour Group's further proposals, I would emphasise that a great deal of work has already been done by the Council's Member Officer Working Group on this matter, which will inform the report coming to the next meeting of Policy and Resources Committee. On teacher numbers, we sought and received assurances that removing 7 posts, which were additional 2-year funded posts in the first place, would not jeopardise the Council's financial settlement, as Councillor Lever suggested it might. We are now implementing the GIRFEC agenda, which targets support at our most deprived children. We require assistance regardless of postcode, and I note those measures have the support of the Labour group. This administration gave a commitment to invest in our roads infrastructure as part of our partnership agreement, and as our budget clearly demonstrates, we will continue to do that. All reasonable suggestions that have been made today will be looked at through service committees as this Council moves forward. But as Councillor McKee has already said, in the current climate, cuts are unavoidable and that we need to face up to the reality. Mr Haswell, I think we're now ready to go to the vote.
Thank you, Leader. The motion is by the Leader, seconded by the Deputy Leader. Can I just remind members that there is an amendment to the piece of paper which was handed round. In the third last line of number 2, the words to enable after the words to enable officers in consultation with local members where appropriate is inserted. Does everybody understand that? The amendment is by the leader of the Labour Group, Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Ogilvie, and that amendment is as set out on page 3 of the Labour Group proposals. Is that's correct, Councillor Nicholson? There are two items there. Agree the budget process. Thank you. Thank you. No, move on. Okay.
I would ask if is there a point of clarification if you would ask for one. Councillor Smith.
With all due respect, Chair, I tried to ask several times and you refused to let me in. I'm unclear what you mean by the savings templates involved. You said it wasn't education because those don't come into effect from the beginning of the financial year, but there are a significant number of changes, savings options, for example, reductions in street cleaning, all sorts of areas there that do come in the beginning of the financial year, and I'm still not clear what you mean by consultation with local members. 90% of the savings options come in at the beginning of the financial year, 90% therefore involve consultation with local members, but you haven't explained to me what consultation with local members actually means and who these local members are, because the way I read it, Most of these savings options cover 47 members. We're all local members when it comes to reducing things like street cleaning, parks and gardens disposal, etc. Which savings options are you actually referring to?
We have a motion amendment. If you don't understand, I'm sorry, but I can't help
Point of
you.
clarification, Chair.
Point of clarification, Mr.
Yeah, on the same point, and I've added the words as advised from the governance officer in consultation with the local members as appropriate. I've listened to what the governance officer says in terms of delegated powers. If local members, and this means an area committee where it has no decision-making powers, and I did ask earlier in terms of customer services and the integration, whether the area committee would be given the powers, is that you saying, or your amendment saying, that the delegation will be put down to area committee to determine that? And again, it's on the question as asked by Councillor Foster in terms of what does it mean in terms of you setting the budget, because nowhere did I hear you say that this would enable local members or 47 members to look at kinship carers and to award, if that is the outcome of the committee. I need clarification on that as to what the amendment actually means in substantive terms. It's woolly, it's almost like the mushroom syndrome.
Well, I'm not sure where you come from, because the amendment is the Labour one, and I don't know which part of the Labour one you don't understand.
Sorry, Chair, then I'll clarify. It's the motion then, and we can all be clever at it if we want.
Speech, it was quite, to give immediate effect to those proposals, I will be moving that all previous delegations with regard to Council's disposal policies in relation to those properties are removed. That was in the speech, and it's highlighted in the motion. I would now ask the Governance Officer to move to the motion amendment. Which point of order?
It's clarification on your motion.
That's not a point of order, a point of clarification.
Point of clarification then. It's in consultation with local members. What exactly does that mean? Because at the end of the day, if you consult with, if an officer consults with local members, and local members are not happy, who does the officer then report to? Or what if it's consultation?
Brought back to the committee. It's quite clear in the amendment. That's the motion. That's what it says. It will be brought back to the relevant committee.
Well, why go to bother consulting with local members when you should take it back to the committee in the first place? You're just giving more work to officers unnecessarily.
Mr. Haswell, if you move to the vote, please.
Thank you, sir. The motion is by the leader, seconded by the deputy leader. The amendment is by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Ogilvie. Leader.
Motion.
Deputy leader. Councillor Bell. Councillor Blake. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Crothers. Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Carson. Councillor Davidson. Councillor Dempster. Councillor Dick. Councillor Diggle. Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Dykes. Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Forster. Councillor Geddes. Councillor Gilroy. Provost Groom. Councillor Yen. Councillor Lever. Councillor McCochtry.
Motion. Amendment, sorry. Amendment.
Councillor McClung. Councillor McComb. Councillor McCutcheon. Councillor McGregor. Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Motion.
Councillor Mayo. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Martin. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Nicholl. Councillor Ogilvie. Councillor Peacock. Councillor Prentice. Councillor Scobie. Councillor Smith. Councillor Syme. Councillor Tate. Councillor Thompson Stephen. Councillor Thompson Ted.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield. Councillor Witts. Councillor Wood.
Chairman, could I ask, is this meeting being recorded? Because if it is, only those who had their microphone switched on when the vote was taken will be recorded in the recording.
The motion is carried by 28 votes to 16, there being one abstention.
Can you clarify that point for me, Chairman, about the recording?
Mr Haswell.
The machines do not pick up someone who does not switch their machine on. However, I have a record of the vote taken, as do my staff.
So are you going to adjust the recording and put in a motion and amendment on behalf of all those who didn't switch on their mics?
Right. If we move on to item 7, any other business. Mr Haswell, you indicated that there was another item you were waiting on clarification at one point. I believe that's arrived.
Yes, Leader, there is an issue which I have asked you to consider taking. It relates to the implementation of a voluntary early retirement and voluntary redundancy scheme for civilian police staff. It's a request has come through from the Scottish Police Authority that we commence on an administrative basis to implement that. I have prepared a report together with a letter which I received this morning from Mr Emery, the chair of the Scottish Police Authority. It would be helpful, Leader, if this report could be considered by members today, since it will enable us to open a scheme which is currently available to every other civilian police staff in Scotland. We cannot implement it ourselves. We would require member input because it does mean the implementation of a different scheme. I have prepared a report. There's been a lot of legal research gone into it. Leader, if you're prepared to take it, I have the report available. I'd ask members maybe to take some time to look at that particular report.
As such, I would be prepared to accept the report. Could we have it circulated around the table? And I would propose that we break for lunch and read the paper and come back at 2. Councillor Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, we had a motion up at the last full council, but you did not take it. That wasn't intimously. Is there any reason why it's not here before us today? It's one on blacklisting.
My understanding, this is the budget meeting. We usually deal with the budget today and nothing else. The motion that you've alluded to will be coming to the March meeting, the regular meeting of the full council.
If I'd be allowed, Chair, I can accept that, but you've just said that this is a budget setting meeting, we don't take anything else, and yet it's being asked to take this extra item of business.
This is because it's an urgent issue. The other one was a decision that was taken in October, came to us in December, so I didn't think it was urgent. You could circulate the paper. willing to start? Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Leader, having taken governance advice, I'll absent myself from this item.
With that, we have the additional item, police reform, voluntary early retirement and voluntary redundancy. Mr Haswell, have you anything you wish to add to the report?
Very little, Chairman. This has come as a request from the Scottish Police Authority. They won't become employers of the civilian staff until the 1st of April, and clearly they're keen to make sure that civilian staff have some certainty as to their future and where they're going. Every other police authority in Scotland has already opened the scheme, including our sister council, Fife. Rona Lewis and I will be happy to take questions from members. I would reassure members that we have taken full legal advice before bringing these recommendations before you.
Councillor Crowther.
Actually, just to make sure, I know we decided that you decided that we would take this item, but just looking at the recommendations, one of the first things we have to do is withdraw delegations. Did we undertake that or not?
I take it members are happy to withdraw delegation from police and fire and policy and resources. Right. Councillor McCaughtrey.
As we were going to move the recommendations, Chairman, since it's no cost to this authority, there's no point in having an argy-bargy about it, and I would so move.
Councillor McKee.
It's just on this letter you've got for the Scottish Police Authority, Chair. The last paragraph on the front page, it's it remains hopeful that the Council will support the opening of a scheme in your area and make a positive early contribution to meeting the budget challenges that policing face in the coming years. Are they looking for us to make a contribution to the police budgets?
No, sir. What they're asking is that you open or apply a scheme which is not the same scheme as the council applies to its staff. There will be no cost to the authority in so doing.
What it means is, in effect, Councillor McKee, is that the Scottish Police Authority are looking to minimise the number of staff that transfer across so that it advances their budget savings that they make. So that's the reason this request has come forward, so that the Scottish Police Authority minimise the number of staff transferring onto their payroll at that point. So that's just sure members are absolutely clear. That's why this is being asked, not for the council to contribute to it.
Just one point I'd like to clarify. This is in relation to council staff just now. Is there any effect on not the police part of the council staff, but the other council staff in the future if we take this decision?
First thing we did when we got the request, and the detail of the request, was to seek an opinion of council on the very issue raised, i.e. the effect or the impact on the Equalities Act 2010. We have an assurance from council that no lawyer will ever say you'll definitely not be challenged, but any challenge would be likely to be unsuccessful.
Councillor Crowther.
Thanks, Leader. The second last paragraph on the first page of the letter to the Scottish Police Authority, it says, in respect to indemnifying the council against potential claim, the Scottish Police Authority are not in a position to agree to this. Could you just explain exactly what that means, please?
What we asked the Scottish Police Authority was, in the event that someone does raise an action under the equality legislation, obviously that would require to be defended, and there are costs in defending any such action, whether it succeeds or not. We asked the police authority to agree to meet the costs that we would incur in the event that any such claim was submitted and we required to defend it. We've done a risk assessment when we got this letter this morning. The potential for a claim is extremely low, and we would also intend to make sure that if anyone retires, that the Scottish Police Authority approve the figures, approve the retirement, and ensure that they are well involved in the case, and we can deal with it legally further down the line if we're required to.
Councillor Peacock.
Chair, it was the same point. Thank you.
Councillor Geddes.
Just going back, Leader, to Mr Haswell's comment about success, I think, about expenses, I think I'm correct in saying, Mr Haswell, that almost invariably expenses follow success, and standing that we've already been told that, it's extremely unlikely indeed that any such action would be successful, I would suggest that we are pretty near bomb-proof as we could be.
I would agree with Councillor Geddes there.
Thanks.
With that, we have the recommendations moved and seconded. Anyone otherwise minded? No? Well, thank you for your attendance.